Hello there, a very good morning and welcome to Newsline, of course, coming to you live and direct from the Newsfirst studios here in Colombo. Your usual host, Farah Shaukat Ali, is out for the day. I'm Sharlan and I will be sitting in for him today. Getting to know our guest for today, very special individual, MP Kanchana from the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna. A very good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Sharlan. Thank you for having me.
Mr. Kanchana, now, speaking about the April 21st attacks, which is the focus of attention right now, how do you believe Sri Lankan people's response to this entire situation has been post-attack?
It's actually everyone's got together as a whole community, whatever differences they had with different politics, party politics, different ethnic groups, different religious groups. What we have seen in the last 2 weeks is that everyone wants to get over this. Everyone wants to contribute in some way to make it a safe place for everyone to live in. And especially, I think, the political leadership, which has been lacking in the last 2 weeks, has been taken over by the Cardinal himself, has done a lot in the last 2 weeks. I think if not for his eminence leadership, we would have been a much more deeper crisis than what we are facing today. But yeah, it's a time for all the political parties to set their differences aside, communities to set their differences aside, and maybe focus on the threat that is existing, because this sort of threat is it's very difficult to plan for. We've gone through 30 years of war, but we knew who our enemy was. They had a uniform, they had a purpose, and they never targeted foreigners like what they have done in the last attacks. But with this new group of terrorists, we are not still sure what their demands are. And they've been targeting mostly civilians, mostly places of where foreigners occupy, and it's very difficult to understand which individuals in a community are actually with the terrorists, because all these people have a background in good education. None of them are from a poor community. Most of them have been wealthy people, good business or successful businessmen. So it's very difficult to predict what sort of people we are against. So this is a time for everyone. Last 2 weeks we have seen a lot of people in the communities reaching to each other to support, but it's still the political leadership needs to take more responsibility. I'm actually surprised that it took 4.5 days or 5 days for the Prime Minister to take up responsibility in some sort of way. And I'm not sure whether the President has done that even in the last 2 weeks. And there are security concerns as well.
We see politicians speaking of political solutions for this issue, but this is an ideological issue. When it came to the fight with the LTTE, they were demanding a plot of land. They were demanding a separate state in the north and the east. They had political demands, but how do you find a political solution for ideological issues?
Now, if you look back and see the political solution that the J.R. Jayawardena government gave to the LTTE demands, that was the 13th Amendment.
Right.
Now, 13th Amendment was to separate power. Provincial councils were established, and to give the chance to their own communities to elect in their own representatives.
Right.
But unfortunately, now in the last 2.5 years, we've seen that 8 of the 9 provincial councils that was maybe probably initiated for this purpose alone have lapsed for the last 1.5 years, and there has been no elections. So that frustration is also there among the people. But I don't see how we can give a political solution to, just like you said, for ideology. Probably we should have communicated, we should have kept close links with them, looked at the intelligence reports that were given for a long period of time, and we can't say that there was no information on this, because not just from foreign intelligence services, but our own intelligence services for the longest time have been tracking these sort of events. So this could have been prevented. Unfortunately, we couldn't prevent it. So hopefully we can work something out to prevent these sort of incidents taking place in the future. I don't think the majority of the Muslim community or the majority of the Sinhalese community or the majority in the Tamil community, any community encourages these sort of people to take up arms. There are extreme elements in all communities, but to take up arms and to take up someone's life is a complete different thing. So I don't think you can give solutions to that, but we can make sure that it doesn't happen. We can establish the confidence in the people. To do that, we need to make national security our priority, and which I feel was not the case in the last 4.5 years to 5 years. We've seen the responsibility of the national security was vested under 5 different ministers in the last 1.5 years. So you have to look at those things.
It's been 10 years since, it's been almost 10 years, or it will be 10 years for the 9th of May that we defeated a 30-year-long terrorist organization in this country. We are one of the only countries in the world to have completely eradicated a terrorist organization from their country. But within that 10 years, it was Field Marshal Sarath Fonseca and also Army Commander Mahir Senanayake who made these statements when they said that we took it too easy as a country.
That is true, because most of the security warnings were there. We've seen in the recent past, most of the countries around us, especially the Asian countries and the Middle Eastern countries, have gone through global terrorism. So we were bound to at some point be a part of it. And
considering the fact that places like Paris and New Zealand, these are developed countries in the world which have quite a tight security program. The United States, they have terrorist attacks. Why did we provide a loose hand?
Every country goes through those sort of attacks, but you can't predict them. Most part of it, you can't predict them. But our problem, the issues that we had, what Mahir Senanayake and the former Army Commander Sarath Fonseca himself, and as well as the former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa, and then the defence heads back then who were instrumental in defeating the LTT, was that we relaxed after the 2009 conflict was over. Most of the intelligence officers that were part of defeating them were taken into custody, were questioned. I'm not saying that people who had done criminal work should not be tried before court. It should be. But most of these intelligence officers who were taken into custody, 42 of them, if I remember correctly, 42 of them were taken into custody over the last 3 years. And most of them were charged under the Prevention of Terrorism Act, which didn't allow them to get bail.
Right.
And none of them were given charge sheets, and none of them, there's 4 more intelligence officers who are still in remand custody, but there haven't been any cases filed against them. So when you keep them in for a longest period, and when you when those intelligence officers lose confidence and the people around them lose confidence in seeing what happens to the intelligence officers who had done so much work during the LTT times and then the last 10 years as well, that made it difficult for the intelligence units to work the way they wanted to. And we saw that many camps in the north and east were shifted. The numbers were reduced, the strength was reduced, mainly because all our sectors, it could be tourism, it could be education, it could be the business, confidence, anything. All those things depends on national security. If you don't have that, all those sectors also fall apart. So that's what we're seeing right now.
I was having a chat with Dhananath Fernando from Advocator Institute yesterday, and he said one of the main reasons that national security wasn't given priority throughout the past 70 years even was because the government was expanding at such a rate and focusing on so many different things. They did not have time for national security. It's a known fact that we have quite a massive cabinet. I mean, that has been the case for quite a long time, even during the previous regime and then all the regimes that came before that. We had quite a large cabinet, but then they don't seem to be fulfilling
I don't quite agree with
intended purpose.
I don't quite agree with that statement for the reason that national security was given a priority during our government before the 2015 change of things. Because we remember the Security Council, which is supposed to meet every week, met on a regular basis with the former Defense Secretary on Tuesdays and with the President on Wednesdays. So there was a security brief done. But what we see right now with the reports, initial reports that are coming out from the government side, from the Prime Minister as well as the President, is that the Security Council hasn't met for the last 6 months. So that is a concern itself. And the process of appointing the IGP, the removing of certain officials, the Defense Secretary's responsibility, all these things have been questioned in the last 4.5 years. So I don't agree with the statement saying that we have compromised national security or given something else a priority in the last 70 years. National security was actually given priority as far as I can remember during the war, and even after the war was the terrorism was defeated. But those were the concerns that were raised at the UN Human Rights Councils.
Right.
That security was given a priority even during our government in later stages of the war and then after the war itself. So I think this government messed up things by working, especially catering to the needs of the international community, especially the human rights bodies. But in doing so, they compromise national security without giving it a priority.
You were speaking about intelligence officers being arrested. You said about 42 of them were arrested. Now, they were arrested under the Prevention of Terrorism Act. The provisions in the Prevention of Terrorism Act were approved in Parliament. Isn't it the responsibility of the legislator to amend these laws if they are serving any purpose other than the purpose that they're supposed to be used for?
No, there should be amendments to the PTA, but now what they're proposing is a completely, totally different new system, new law to come into place. But the thing is, when these intelligence officers were taken under the PTA, the same law didn't apply to the people who were taken into custody in the recent past regarding to the Wanatha estate where the explosives were found, about 100 kilograms of C4 was found. The people who were...
Even the employees who were arrested from the copper factory that was alleged to be...
and they were let out.
They were let out.
Yeah, because they were only tried, I think it was only a detention order that was...
Yes, the police sought a detention order.
Detention order. So that was not the scenario with the intelligence officers. That's why we are saying there was a targeted certain sector of people that the government wanted to target, and not just 42 people who are in remand, but 312 intelligence officers and officials of the armed forces were questioned in the last 1.5 years regarding different things. So you had to understand the mentality of these people. And we are hearing also that it was discussed 47 times about these threats that were existing in the Security Councils in lead up to the April 21st attacks. But none of them took it seriously. The Indian High Commission brought it to the attention, and in 2016 we are hearing that the former State Minister of Foreign Affairs, Wasantha Senanayake himself, saying that the Turkish embassy, the ambassador gave out details, and we also have a copy of some of the details with names of 50 individuals who were part of some terrorist activities in Turkey that had come to Sri Lanka with the passport numbers and everything, and the government was not able to track them down.
Now, police media spokesperson SP Rohan Gunasekara, speaking to media yesterday, said that they are looking at seizing the assets of the National Tawhid Jamaat, which is now a banned organization. What's staggering here is the fact that their assets are valued at about 7 billion rupees. Now, it's a known fact that you can't come up with such an amount of money in just a few years, or overnight for that matter. It has been a constant process. What was done since the inception of the time of the NTJ? Wasn't this entire threat captured from its inception?
Those are the concerns that are coming out of all these reports now, because the intelligence reports clearly have mentioned these people were sort of forming up the extreme group of individuals. So I don't know why we can't, we didn't actually do anything in the last 1.5 years, 2 years regarding all these things and with the information that they had. Once again, we go back to the same question, why national security was not given a priority. So if the reports were assessed, if the intelligence services were utilized, I don't think we would have faced this problem.
Going back to something that you said earlier, it caught my attention. You said when we were speaking about the attacks in Paris, in Nice, in New Zealand, you said these kind of attacks cannot be predicted, but they can be expected.
Yeah, they surely can be expected, and in our case scenario,
it should be expected.
Not that it should be expected. All the names, individuals, addresses, phone numbers to where the attacks would take place was actually given on a piece of paper, and those reports were there. So why they didn't attend to it is another question.
Does Sri Lanka have a risk management plan, a protocol maybe in place to respond to such a situation at the blink of an eye?
No, that is one important question that comes out of all this, the 21st attacks on 21st April. I don't think we have a national policy on anything. We need to build up a national policy on security as well as trade on each sector, because every government that comes in, they bring their own policy. And even within a government, when the ministers change, the minister brings in his own policy. So there needs to be a national policy on everything. So that national policies, national guidelines are followed by whichever government comes in, then it won't lead to these problems. So even now, I think the government needs to have one voice. Now, the part that hasn't given confidence to people is that there doesn't seem to be one leader taking control of things, because we've seen in the past that there was executive presidency, executive prime minister. We've gone through different phases, but there's always been one person taking charge. Now we don't see that. The messages that we are getting from within the government, from different parts of the government, are two different messages. Now we saw that yesterday. The education minister wanted to open up schools on Monday, but we saw that certain members even within the government opposed the same idea. And we saw that the public, especially the parents, they didn't feel comfortable even with the army spokesperson, the police spokesperson, and then the education minister coming out and say, send your children in on Monday to start school again. The public didn't feel comfortable in doing that. So the confidence of the public needs to, they need to think about that. To boost that, you need to have one voice, one leader. It goes the same. It is the same thing for all sectors. Even the tourism sector, there's a massive drop in the tourism sector right now.
Yes, but this is the immediate aftermath of the incident, so this kind of a reaction is expected. However, analysts predict that this number would go up in the coming months, given that we get our security plan
No, it is expected. All these things are expected after a terror attack, but it is how we respond after the attack. So even right now, after 2 weeks of these attacks, we don't see a timeline on rebuilding, a timeline how we are getting over it. We don't see how that is being done. Now, this 19th Amendment in one way has paved the way, where the head of the country, the head of the defense forces, the head of the cabinet can't make a decision on who the IGP should be. The IGP was asked to resign, but he never resigned. So they had to appoint someone else going through a different channel. So if those decisions cannot be made, and if the Prime Minister, the same Prime Minister who was there when these intelligence officers were taken under the PTA, says that terrorists who have done terrorism activities out of Sri Lanka cannot be taken in on this terrorism bill, I don't know how we can go
But
forward.
then again, you're bringing up the 19th Amendment again. This was one of the acts in Parliament, or one of the proposals in Parliament that were passed with an overwhelming majority. Both parliamentarians from the side of the government, the opposition, across the floor, voted in favour of this. Why didn't they bring it up at the time?
No, I think they brought up these issues at that time. I didn't represent the Parliament at that time when the 19th Amendment was brought forward. But if you look at the timing of how that was brought forward, it was brought forward maybe a month before the Parliament was dissolved, and straight after presidential elections. And the key factors that they were talking about in the 19th Amendment was about independent commissions, the Independent Police Commission, Independent Elections Commission, the Bribery Commission. But if you look at all these things in the last 4.5 years, the Independent Police Commission hasn't been able to do anything. The orders that they give are changed by the IGP. The Independent Election Commission hasn't been able to hold elections for 2.5 years for various reasons. So the Independent Bribery and Corruption Commission that is looking into allegations hasn't been able to deliver on anything. So I don't see it empowering anything on the 19th Amendment, but taking the right away from certain individuals to govern. That's what's the situation in the Parliament right now. Even if the Parliament members want to go and dissolve the Parliament, they need 2/3 in the Parliament majority to do that. Where it was before, it was a simple majority could have been used to dissolve Parliament, go in for new elections, maybe give the public the chance to elect in new officials, but that's not been the case.
But then getting back to finding solutions for this ideological issue, experts say that the education system in the country also paves the way for such ideologies to bolster in the country. Your opinion on this?
Now, there are so many opinions coming in straight after this aftermath of the attacks. So I don't think we can take all the opinions coming out right now, because we wouldn't know which opinions to take up on. But I do agree that there needs to be a change in the system. That has been spoken about in a long time.
Yes.
And so I think maybe before going into changes into the system, what we need to do right now is to build confidence within the community and make it a safer place. Because right now a lot of people are still not coming out of their houses. I know a lot of people in different communities are feeling frightened. So we need to first get together to build that confidence. And if we can work on that and maybe speak with the foreign diplomats and maybe lower down the risk levels, maybe allow people to come in, people to go back to work, people to go back into schools, make it a safer environment, then we can talk about building up a different system, proposals for a new system. But in that case also, I don't think this Parliament can be utilized to do that, because the term of this Parliament comes to an end in about 6-7 months.
Yes.
So I don't think immediate changes, radical changes would do any good, but maybe make a plan for the next 6 months. Go for elections. But before going for elections, make it a safer environment for everyone else. For that, I think first of all, the government ruling members needs to come into one voice. There is 2 fractions of the government. So those 2 fractions needs to come together, because they're the ones who represent the Security Council, as well as they're the ones in charge of everything else in this country. So first they need to come into some sort of agreement and then work on a plan. I think that's how we should go forward, because right now the way things are going, if people are not given the right information, even the information that has been sent out now it took about 3-4 days after the attacks for the government to set up an information desk. Because the numbers that were going out now, first we heard it was 390 deaths, then it came down to about 250 or 240.
But in that matter, forensic experts did come forward and say that these sort of errors are a common occurrence in such a situation.
But the numbers should have been given in the first place then, because the
True.
information should have been shared from one location, not the health ministry or the defense ministry, but all of them coming together. The information department is for that reason. So there should have been a information department. Even the news channels, some of the news channels were given a free hand to
Right.
do certain news in the way they wanted. Now we've seen.
Kanchana, real quick, we're coming to, unfortunately, the end of the show for today. Is there any message that you'd like to give out to the general public on how we can move forward from this juncture in time?
No, right now, what I would like to say is that now we're looking at different communities and thinking, because certain parts of the communities took part in this terrorism acts, we can't put the entire community as terrorists. So, and I also feel that the community leaders within the Muslim community needs to take charge. We've seen the leadership given by His Eminence the Cardinal Malcolm Ranjit to the Catholic community, but we don't see that from the Muslim community. So leaders like Rauf Hakim, leaders in the Muslim community who represent the parliament, religious leaders, they need to come out and counter this, because if they stay quiet, that gives a wrong message as well. And we know the majority of Muslims are peaceful people who have lived in harmony for the longest time in this country.
Who have stood side by side with their brothers and sisters and fought the 30-year-long war as well.
And even most of the intelligence officers that were working during the height of the war was from the Muslim community.
Yes.
But right now we are seeing a division there. And so that needs to be done by those communities itself. So we also, as our party, the SLPP ruling party of most of the local council bodies, we have instructed our local council members to give whatever support that is needed, to speak to them, give them protection if they need them, and to make sure that people are safe going into school, going into work, to be aware of the threats that are there in their areas, because the police force itself and the army forces itself wouldn't be able to provide.
It is imperative that the general public as a whole comes together and respond positively to these issues so that we can move forward as a country and of course establish peace and harmony in this beautiful island nation, the pearl of the Indian Ocean. Thank you very much, MP Kanchana Vijay Sekhara, for coming on this show. And thank you very much to all our viewers out there for tuning in. Until next time, take care and God bless.